have this question in terms of aptitude.
Lemon tint the B12, double check the details. Gotta cross my T's and dot my I's or I can't sleep well.
What's up, man?
Hey, what's up, Fred? This is Broderick.
Yeah, how you feel?
I just want to talk about the education because I think that the lack of education and deferring to, like you said, the team and the managers create a situation where they don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how Cats get ripped off by relying on financial managers. Like you got Kevin Garnett, who lost $77 million to his manager. Guys getting ripped off all the time, and it's something that Nipsey Hussle talked about is like knowing the business that you're in.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you know the business, it creates a situation where you know how to move and how to build your leverage up.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you get into the boxing game, a lot of times you may not have any resources, you may not have any capital, and someone comes to you with a bag of $10,000 or $50,000, you may take it and then sign a long-term contract and basically screw yourself.
Yep.
And so you got to know the game before you come into it, because it's not really a game. It's not really a game. It's a business. Now, you said something about being payroll and employee. I think that every boxer should be getting paid into an LLC.
Oh,
because at least they
or nonprofit.
At least they have the right, because they can pay themselves as a W-2 employee.
Yeah.
And then figure out the tax situations amongst there. You can get your health care through your LLC.
Yeah.
You can set up a SEP IRA or 401k, however you want to set up so you can fund your retirement.
Yeah.
And then, and then just living a simple lifestyle. Too many times, like when I see these cribs or these behind, these all accesses with the boxers, they have great big houses, they have 5, 6 cars. And unless they're leasing those cars, that's just a depreciating asset. And that's just dumb, to be quite frankly. And there's this old documentary that was filmed with Ali and Larry Holmes.
Mm-hmm.
And they filmed it in, I think, 1978. And he talked about he had one house and he has one, I think at the time he had the same wife he currently has, but he lived a very simple lifestyle.
Larry Holmes,
and
talking about, right?
I think by living a simple lifestyle, it's easy to maintain in retirement, not having a bunch of Ferraris. Like I saw something on Mikey Garcia. He had 3 Ferraris, 2 were the same model, I think different colors. That's just, unless he's leasing those vehicles through an LLC, that's just dumb. And so by living a simple lifestyle, it creates it's easier to maintain when the checks stop coming in, because you're not going to fight forever. The checks are going to stop coming in. And the longer you fight, the more cognitive damage you're suffering and the greater likelihood that you're going to fuck off your money.
Nice.
Now, I think everyone, if they don't know, they should look at what's called the concept of the 4% rule. The 4% rule is essentially if you have your money invested in an index fund tracking the S&P 500 or the total stock market, you can take out 4% every year and you won't run out of money, because the long-term stock return, if you reinvest your dividends, is about 11% over the last 100 years. Now, some years may be higher, some years may be lower, but they've ran these simulations. You're not going to run out the money. The problem is that a lot of not just fighters, but athletes in general, their lifestyles aren't maintainable off of 4%, and they're not in control of their money. Like you can put your money in VTI or Boo or a multitude of these index funds, and you can log into your E-Trade or Vanguard account and just check it. Like there's an article I read with Floyd Mayweather, and it was on ESPN magazine, and he took the writer to the bank, and he got his account statement printed out, and it was $100 million in his checking account. Mm-hmm. Now the writer was like, man, that seems kind of silly, kind of stupid. But the smart thing is that when you have $10 million, you don't need to really be investing to make more money. You just need to be not fuck off your money. $10 million is enough for most people to live a comfortable lifestyle, especially if you're only taking out 4%, if it's invested in some index fund. Even if it's not, if you live a modest lifestyle, you can live off $10 million quite comfortably. So a lot of athletes trust, white financial managers with their money, and then those guys are getting paid off of trades and stuff they make. Even if they only charge you 1%, 1% is a lot when you need to live off of the capital. When if they get you 11% returns, they're doing great. So I see that stuff, and I see these videos. Like, for instance, Charlo had something a couple weeks ago, and he has a great big house and a lot of high-end cars. And I'm just like, I didn't know that Charlo was making 8 figures a fight. And that just seems like that's going to be hard to maintain when the checks stop coming in when you turn 40, even if your career goes great.
It's going to be impossible.
And, you know, there's an article about Charlo a couple years ago got robbed of $150,000 in jewelry. That's just dumb.
Yep.
You know what I mean? So I think that those are, I feel bad that cats get ripped off. And I think that on the front end, they need to negotiate themselves, and they need to be taking ownership and figure out a way to own. Even this ESPN showing these fights, they're only able to show the fights because Top Rank owns the actual video.
Speak on it.
So
they own the whole
catalog
of
boxing.
boxing.
Doesn't care about the fights being on YouTube because they don't care. But if they did, they can get that taken down. It's not up to the fighter. So it's almost better to take less money up front to own the actual video and the rights to fights, because you can license that to ESPN, HBO, Showtime. You own that. That's a real asset. And that's where, like, when people really start listening, I love Nipsey, not so much for the rapping. I like Crenshaw and Victory Lap, but I love his interviews because, like, I own a business and I just recognize, like, man, like, you don't need these people. And then when you do go in and you build yourself up and you have a fan base, then you can look the man across the table eye to eye and make a good deal and be a partner. So you're not being another employee. And so, like, I just think that we got to be preaching ownership. And even if it's less money on the front end, you just need to manage your money right so that at the end of the game, you have assets that can pay you long term. And just, like, I have a lot of thoughts, but like Steven Jackson talked about, like, pick one woman, marry that chick, because you really break it down. Uncle Sam's basically going to get 50% of your check. If you get married and divorced, you're looking at another half. So out of $1 million, Uncle Sam's getting $500,000. You get divorced after you earn that $1 million. Your wife's getting $250,000, and that leaves you with $250,000. And that's assuming you didn't spend nothing. So the point is like, we've got to we got to start making better decisions on every aspect to make so that you can be in the position to take advantage of your leverage if you get to that point. And hopefully things turn around. And I don't think that guys making $1 million are going to agree to a union, because I think that the union needs to be guys on the undercard, guys that are fighting for 30 grand, 50 grand, 10 grand. Like, Errol Spence is fighting for $1 million. Like, a union would only hurt him, in my opinion. So, like, he doesn't really need a union. But the guys that are on the undercard fighting for 10 grand, and they got to pay the promoter, and then they got to pay their cut man, and they got to pay the trainer. It's like, they may be walking away with 3 or 4 grand before tax. So that's crazy to me. So, like, but again, you know, we got to talk about these conversations culturally, so that when people from our culture become athletes, they're like, man, I want to manage my money myself, because it's really not that complicated.
It's not. And
at least even if you just put it in bonds or something, you just need not to spend it.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So, like, it's a cold game out there, but that's, like, my thoughts on it. And I just think that there's a website that this guy named jlcollinsnh.com, and he's got really good financial advice tips. And I found it really helpful, and it's simple. It's not really hard. And you can just create your account, get on there, and start investing. So that's my thoughts, Fred. I appreciate it. I don't know if you have any questions or anything.
What type of law do you practice?
I do personal injury. So I work on percentage too. I take 40% if I file a lawsuit. I take 33 and a third percent on a sign up. And I represent tenants that live in uninhabitable conditions. So I know that, like, most people that sign up sadly don't read the contract. And even if they do read it, most people don't really understand it, and they're too ashamed to ask questions. When people ask questions, I gladly answer it, because I'm not trying to rip anybody off. But most of my cases are run-of-the-mill cases. They're not $1 million cases. So I'm not really out here trying to negotiate my fee, to be honest with you, even though it's negotiable. So if you feel like you can find an attorney to take it for 25%, I would say be my guest. And that's, I think, the leverage that a lot of promoters have over these boxers. If you're not Devin Haney, if you're not Ryan Garcia, if you're Joe Blow, without pedigree, I mean, you know, if you want a favorable deal, go to somebody else. That's what I would assume happens, and that's why you're in a bad deal, at least initially. And same with the rap industry. Like, here's $10,000. I'm going to take your publishing, and I'm going to take, you know, your masters, and I'm going to sign you to a 360. Good luck.
Damn.
You know, and if you don't pop, you don't pop. But if you do pop, like, I'm on 8. You know, so it's a cool game out there, man. But if you know and try to educate yourself beforehand, at least you know you're getting bent over. You know what I mean? Because you may get bent over, and we all get bent over. But at least you know, like, all right, man, I'm getting screwed, but you're making an informed decision. And I think a lot of catchers don't make an informed decision, and they only really look into it when they determine that they don't have any money at some point. So, yeah, that's my thoughts.
I appreciate you calling in.
But, yeah, I would have less team around you. I want to have people around me. I would be in control of my money. And like you said, I would want the check, and I would be paying the promoter and my manager out of my LLC.
Yeah, and I say it all the time. I say it all the time. And your trainer, we're going to give away too much game on this, but the trainer needs to be working for your nonprofit. The trainer is not your trainer. The trainer is your gym. He works, you train after school kids, you know what I mean? And he works there, and you make a donation to that nonprofit, and that's how he gets paid. So now you've donated a portion of your check, which is non-taxable, you know what I mean? And it lowers your taxable income, you know? So,
yeah, right. And another thing, now that I'm thinking about it, Fred, most boxers, especially guys not training in California, you can own the property where you train in an LLC, and then your boxing corporation that you work for rents that from your property LLC. And then you also run the nonprofit that you own out of that LLC. And then you're basically just shifting money to different
I know.
assets and keeping money in. And like Nip said, all money in, no money out.
Yeah, I live that life. That's the life I live. Yeah, you know what I mean? Yeah. Yeah. So I'm from West Side 60. Shit, I might got killed. You know what I mean? But yeah, no, that's the line and all my grinding. But these fighters ain't gonna get it, man. These fighters are not gonna get it for the most part. But I think the few that will, you know, there's somebody's team listening right now, and hopefully they're Googling what we just discussed. You know,
yeah, man.
I'm not that well versed on other state laws and stuff like that, because there's so many laws I have to learn here in California. But I think it's just important that these fighters know what you spoke of. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah,
because they can save so much money, man.
Right, and so much money. And like, for instance, like I'm up in here in the Bay Area, and Andre Ward lives up here. He lives in a modest community, and I know people that go to his church. He drives modest cars. He's been with the same girl, the same wife, and he got all his kids with the same wife. So he's not getting hit with divorce, child support, and he didn't make Floyd money, but like the odds of him running out of his money seem slim to me. And I'm not in his pocket, but like it seems slim. And I know he had his lawsuit about his insurance. I think he got insurance policy. That was even smart to get the insurance policy on your health, which is why he's never gonna come back. But it's stuff like that, man. I just think that you're right. The conversation needs to be had, and hopefully people start taking advantage. And everyday people, because if you invest $250 a month and you're in your 20s every month, you'll be a millionaire by the time you're 50.
Yeah.
Just from compound interest.
Compound interest. They don't even know what compound interest is. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You and I gonna have a conversation. You and I should do a
So
video.
it's like stuff like, I mean, and I wasn't always super educated on it. And I was out here doing dumb stuff. But at a certain point, I was like, man, like I need to be a little bit more smarter, and I need to just take the time and teach myself the rules of the game, because they're out there, and a lot of people don't discuss it, particularly in our community.
Sure.
And it's like when you know that this $10,000 that you're going to buy some jewelry on and that you may blow in the club, whatever, in 7 years it could be double 20, and then 7 years after that it could be doubled again
40.
From 20 to 40, and it just starts building. And that's how, like, I mean, that's wealth, basically.
Yeah.
When your money is working for you. So, I mean,
Reggie Owens.
Your show, Fred. I've been following with you for a week, man. You got good content.
I appreciate
the community.
Last question. Reggie Owens wanted you to explain the 360 deal.
So my understanding of a 360 deal is that they own everything you do. So like if they're getting a percentage. So if you're a rapper, they're getting the songs, they're getting a piece of your publishing, they're getting a piece of your touring, they're getting a piece of your merch. If you do anything, I think if you go on a movie, they may get a piece of that. So they basically own you. Mm-hmm. And so you're essentially working for them. So it's kind of like Nip talked about, like they give you fame and then they take the money.
Yep.
And that's like, and then when we have artists that sign
satisfied with this fame, nigga. Yeah, that's what he says.
Satisfied with this fame. Yeah. And it's like, I was listening to a conversation between Joe Budden and Lupe Fiasco, and Lupe was talking about stuff, man. And it was like, I mean, these executives are just playing chess out here. And if you don't know, even if you do know, because Lupe seemed like he knew, it was like you can't really combat it because they're just out here ruthless. And so it's just fucked up. And like we really need to get our own distribution. Because at least if you're going to get bent over by someone black and not have people outside of the culture benefiting from the culture. So, I mean, that's my opinion on it.
No, you know, it's two things. They think white ice is colder and they want to be famous. You know what I mean? They don't want the fortune. Yeah. They think the fame is the fortune. You know what I mean? Like it's a
yeah. And it's like stuff like you see all these press releases talking about, you know, Kanye West is a billionaire, Jay-Z's a billionaire. When you really deep dive in there, that's all bullshit. And like you got dudes like Al Heyman where he's not announcing his stuff, but when you can read the I think Live Nation is a publicly traded company, and you can go in their SEC filing reports, and they bought his company, and like he's got equity in that big corporation, and they still use him as a consultant even while he's doing this boxing stuff. When I see online that Al Heyman's only worth $15 million, that's only because he's not announcing his stuff publicly, and he's basically moving in silent. And you move in silent and people don't know your business, but I mean, that's the best way to move in my opinion. Like fuck the fame. I just want to be a legend at the bank.
Yeah.
So
nah, facts. And that's where I met Nipsey.
Appreciate you, friend.
I appreciate you, man. I appreciate you dropping some information. One. Yeah, man. Yep. Yeah, thank you. Some clarification there. Yeah, these fighters gotta. Hopefully they get it, man. Hopefully they listening, man. Hopefully they listening.
Lemo tip to V12. Double check the details. Gotta cross my T's and dot my I's or I can't sleep well.
What's poppin', Reds?
Hey, man, I had to call and say salute to that last caller, man.
That's Roger. Right?
That was some key shit right there, man. That was an excellent call, but I was gonna say you got to put that into a separate video.
I'll do it just for you. Absolutely right.
Yeah. People need to listen to what was said right there. That was some key shit, and that's our culture. Our culture is intelligent.